Okay, that was a fantastic session from Anthony on positioning. And now we're on to session 3, how to talk to your customers and actually learn something. And for this one, we are joined by customer research expert Ryan Paul Gibson. He's the founder of Content Lift. This session connects directly to what Anthony just covered, but from a crucial earlier stage. How do you gather all those customer insights that are going to inform your positioning? That's by talking to your customers. But Ryan actually thinks that's horrible advice. And that's because most marketing teams tend to treat this as friendly chats. And that's where things go horribly, horribly wrong. Ryan's conducted over 2,000 customer interviews, and he's going to show us exactly how to have the kind of meaningful conversations that uncover golden insights about your buyers that you actually need. And we've also shared a bunch of really helpful resources, including 184 questions for customer interviews. Check them out in your event panel. I refer to them all the time. Ryan, can you hear me okay?
Okay, I know that we're having a little bit of a tech glitch with Ryan, but worry not, folks. He's dropped off and he's logging back in just a quick second. I think he's had issues with his internet, but in the meanwhile, I'd encourage all of you to maybe start looking at some of the resources that Ryan put together for us for this session. They're in the chat. This also includes one fantastic list of 184 questions that Ryan's put together, which you can use to start running your customer interviews immediately. All of these questions are, Ryan, we've got you back.
I hope so.
Oh, yay, great, amazing. Oh, there you are.
Okay.
All right.
How's am I lagging? I set up a hotspot quick. Am I okay?
No,
Oh,
you
Can you see me?
you look great, Ryan. You look fantastic. Wow, we were
Okay.
having a long
Sorry about
conversation
that.
before. Dropped off at just the
You
wrong
were
time.
introducing me. You were introducing me, and then all of a sudden, like, internet disconnected. I'm like, oh my god, come on.
All right, Ryan. Well, I know you've got so many great things to share with us. You are the expert when it comes to customer research. You really break it down to the most practical way that I've ever seen. And so, if you wouldn't mind bringing up your presentation, Ryan, we'll let you take it away.
Yeah. Thank you. And apologies again. I gotta call my internet provider. Okay. And there might be a bit of a lag, I'm going to guess. So let's hope we can get through this. Thank you, everybody. I'm not sure how they introduced me, but just as a refresh, I've been in B2B almost 22 years now. And I've worked almost every single role you can think of at a small reprieve as a reporter, an investigative reporter in TV and radio for 3 years, and back into marketing. And my whole focus is customer research, and it has been for the last few years. What I'm hoping to share with you today are four things. So, why you need to do this in the first place. Not everyone does. Why I think conversations, one-on-one interviews are the best form of research. There's a lot of things you can do. I like them the best, and I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to show you how to run these things, in a way that's really straightforward. And I'm going to show you some ways that we've turned insights into actions. Because at the end of the day, you got to do stuff with the data. I'm going to show you a really simple process for doing that. One of the things we have to realize is that interviews are really one subset of market research, and they have been for decades. There's a whole bunch of different things you can do within the market research scope. Customer interviews is just one of those things. And market research is really bucketed into a bunch of different categories. There's really primary and secondary when you break it down. Secondary, sometimes you call desk research. Primary is you go out and get it yourself. Surveys, focus groups, observational work. So that would be, watching how people do a thing or interact with something. And then what I do, which is one-on-one interviews, also called sometimes qualitative research. Secondary, desk research, trade media, associations, research papers, reviews online, your own or other sites, social media as a form of secondary research, like aggregating social media, going to forums or networking groups, and even sales calls. And I call sales calls with an asterisk there because it's actually someone else going out and getting that data. It's not you driving, guiding the research. Another way we bucket these things too, just think about it, is there's quantitative and qualitative. Quantitative is what most of us are familiar with. And that's usually hard data sets, numbers. It's an action happened, this happened here at this time. Qualitative, which is what I do, is often answers the why behind quantitative. How did something happen and why did something happen? And that's really where I like to focus my energies when we're talking research. The reason I like interviews as a methodology is there's 4 reasons. One is B2B purchases are what we call highly considered. It's another way of saying like they're complex. When we look at consumer purchases versus B2B, there's a lot that goes into a B2B purchase as opposed to a consumer product. You know, if I'm buying a bottled water, there's not a lot of consideration that goes into that. But if I'm buying a piece of machinery for a bottled water manufacturing plant, it's a big difference. And the reason is the stakes are higher, there's more people involved, and B2B buyers mitigate the risk, perceived risk of making a choice. There's things on the line like revenue and jobs. So there's a lot of consideration goes into them. Interviews help us like navigate and understand that environment of consideration. The second reason is buyers evaluate things contextually based on what they do, their business model, their processes. I'm going to show you a bit of what I mean by that. But that's the lens through which they evaluate what am I going to do about a problem. It's not they just look at necessarily just the use case. They look at the use case through the lens of what they do and how they do things within their business. It involves a lot of people, typically, right? Now, it could be 2 people or it could be 7, depending. I've heard of deals where there's 15 people involved. So you need to sort of navigate. You won't get that data of how these different stakeholders interact through a survey or a dashboard. You actually have to go and ask questions about how these people interact and how business cases are built to invest in a solution. And why I like them the best is it really gets you the mindset of how people think and why they buy something over all the other things they can do in the business. One of the biggest, I don't want to say lies, that's harsh, but misconceptions that I think we've been told is that the funnel is how buyers buy. The funnel is a fine schema. It's been around for 150 years. But it's not actually the way in which buyers move through a thing. It's just a great tool for organizing our assets after we've figured out how buyers buy. This, on average, is how B2B buyers make decisions. So first off, they have to prioritize a process that they want to improve. And prioritize is the key term there. There's all sorts of things happening in the business. There's all sorts of problems. But what is the tipping point where they will actually want to start investing money from their capital into solving a problem? That's the key thing. And what is that process and why does it exist and how does it work? Then they determine, okay, we want to improve this process. How do we determine what we're going to do? So to back that up into a real life example, HubSpot is not the marketing process. It lives within the process of revenue or marketing operations. So if they want to improve that process, what are they going to do next? What are their options for improving their rev ops or their marketing ops? There's probably a bunch of things that they're looking at outside of your solution. Could even just be hiring another person. The next step is to build a short list of their options, right? They start whittling things down. And that short list could be built quickly when they isolate a problem a process they want to improve, or it can be built over months or years, right? And they'll revisit it and change it. You need to understand how they build that list. How do names and brands and companies and solutions get on it? And they'll evaluate it. That's where they start to really put the microscope in and take out, peel back the layers. What do they do there and why? And then they select a vendor. Here's the key thing. Sales calls and surveys and dashboards often get you this data, right? That high consideration part of the journey. But marketers have to influence here, where most of the market lives and isn't ready to buy yet. And you won't get that data from all the things you interact with on a day-to-day basis. You got to go out and actually understand what's happening before people get to that high consideration side of things. So that's the key part of what we need to understand of how and why buyers buy. The type of interview you have with people can vary. There's various things you can talk about because research objectives and the ways we interact with our business, our customers over time are complex. These are just 4 out of dozens. And I saw some people talk about a list of questions I have as my resource. I think there's about 12 or 13 different types of research objectives and types of interviews you can have. These I like because these deal with more of the marketing side of things. So there's buying journey, which is what I focus on in my business, how and why buyers buy. There's customer discovery, which is evaluating new markets, new segments, evaluating new business ideas. And those two are actually very closely linked, but there's also distinctions because understanding why someone's buying something now versus would they actually buy something in a new market are different exercises. There's brand identity. So that's the perception of what someone has of your brand or the brands in a market, not what you think them to be. And there's buying committee, understanding the various stakeholders that are involved in the process. Those are 4 different types of interviews. And you could spend an hour with a person just talking about those specific things, right? So, there's really, you have to understand there's a lot of ground you can cover and not all of it is going to be relevant to you. So you need to understand, okay, what is it I really want to know? We'll talk about that when we're setting objectives. One of the things I talk about a lot on LinkedIn is the cliche about talking to customers. And it's not that that's a bad idea. It's just how we frame the thought. People seem to think that sometimes, and I've seen this happen, that it's just like a friendly chat with people, like it's a networking call or, you're catching up. And that's fine because that's the vibe. Like it should feel that way. But this is research. So you're actually investigating how and why they do things. And you have to structure the conversation as such. So on the surface, it's like, friendly chat. Underneath the surface is an investigation. So you need to structure the conversation in a way that you're grounding it in a research objective or a problem statement or something you want to solve, something you want to know. And you're not asking opinions, hot takes. Some of that is fine for marketing for various reasons like testimonials, case studies, what have you. But what you want to understand is facts, behaviors, actions, how people actually move through a process and make decisions about things, because those are the things you have to influence with marketing. So you're gathering all these facts, behaviors, and actions so you can actually do something with that data to then inform your marketing and sales programs. So again, not a chat, structured conversation. I look at interviews in 4 parts. So the first is you got to set the objectives, and we touched on that a little bit. But what do you want to know? And what are you going to do with the data? If you don't have a rationale as to why you're going to get this data, then you shouldn't be running research, right? You need to understand what is it I'm going to do in the business. And then you're going to reverse engineer what you want to know. That's like 101 of any design project, whether it's UX, research or something else. You start at the end of what you want to achieve and you work backwards. Then you're going to find the best fit people. Not everyone is going to be a fit for what you want to understand. Customers who have been working with you for 6 years are different than customers who've been working with you for 6 months, and they're different than buyers out of market who have no idea you exist. All those people can give you clarity and insights into different parts of the buying journey and the relationship you can have with them. Who's the best fit and why? And also who in a business and what type of firmographics and psychographics make sense. And we'll talk a bit about that. Then you got to connect them. Remember, not a conversation. And then you got to turn insights into actions. I'm going to show you how I do that. So an objective is really the guiding force of how you're going to discuss something with somebody. One of the questions I get is like, well, where do I start? How do I build this? How do I create an objective? It really starts with the problems in your business or the things you want to improve. Goals, KPIs. We want to increase the number of qualified deals next quarter by 5%. We want to increase traffic to our website, organic traffic to our website by 5%. No one is sharing our stuff on social. We want to understand why. Whatever it is you want to learn and understand, that is sort of your starting point, and you work backwards. And then that helps you understand the lines of themes and topics and questioning you're going to have. I know I have a list of like 184 questions that I give to people, but it's really a starting point. You will want to really fine tune what you're going to ask and what you want to understand based on your business and your customers' business models and what the data you need to do the thing you want to do in the business. But a list of like 1,000 random questions ain't going to help you here. You actually want, what are the things you want to talk about at a high level? And last is, what would you like to do with the data, right? So what are we going to do with this? Because that's part of your objectives. It was, again, you're reverse engineering what it is you want to understand. So those are the 3 things you have to keep in mind when you're setting objectives. These are objectives that clients came to me with in various projects. So the first was a consultant who had worked in pharmaceutical for 10 years, started as a scientist, moved into business development. They wanted to launch a consultancy, trying to understand if they could help pharmaceutical companies launch digital healthcare products. So in essence, are they going to pay me to help them do this? And my first question to them was, okay, well, how are they doing this in the first place? How are other pharmaceutical companies doing this? Because this person had done it in-house. So they were trying to take all their education and their learnings and commercialize it. And the answer to this question was like, I don't know. So, okay, well, we got to figure out how pharmaceutical companies are developing and launching digital products, because if we understand that process, we understand how we're going to influence and support it, and then probably commercialize their skill set. The second one was a company built a software product for managing the physical life cycle of mobile devices. They were a managed service provider, and like a lot of managed service providers, they built their own tool in-house and they wanted to spin it out and make money from it. Great. First question I asked them, so what is the process of how people are doing this? And they're like, that's a great question. Let's go find out. The first are not objectives. They're things you want to have happen. Below here is like how we're actually going to design the research to go figure out if those things are going to happen. That's a difference between, something that I think I want to have done in the business, my problem, versus, okay, well, what is the research and problem statement that's going to help us understand whether that's a reality or not? And these are how it would look like for me in one of my projects, right? What is the objective? We talked about the different themes and topics. So here were the common pains and priorities of the ICP for this IT management software. You can see who we're trying to focus on. It's a senior manager director with a minimum of 200 devices in play. And there's a reason why we did that, because there's a hypothesis that before that, no one's going to pay for software to help manage the minimum number of devices below that. And all the things we want to understand that's going to help us validate whether there's a business opportunity here. And you can see this is the process that we believe they were enacting, right? And we're going to try and understand if that process exists in aggregate across the sample size. So if you have a research objective, the next part of it is like, okay, well, who's going to help me learn this thing, right? Who's the best fit for that? Well, to start, you got to figure out, okay, well, what is the type of business model I want to interview, the person in this business interview, and determine if they fit your research objectives. So just to unpack that a bit, I'm working right now with a managed service provider of IT products. They're trying to figure out, who the best fit customer is. Well, they have customers range from municipal governments to state governments in the United States. They also have large retail chains and food manufacturers. We could go interview them all together, but that is actually going to sort of cobble the data in a way that we will make sense of it and give us the insights we need about picking the best fit customer. Those are all different segments, and you have to treat them as separate research projects, because the way they solve problems, as you mentioned, is going to be looked at through the context of their business model, how they do things, and what they're trying to achieve in the business. Another way to look at this is, if I'm going to be launching, or I'm trying to build a marketing program for a company that sells into IT, an IT lead at a software company that is helping 100 software engineers solve day-to-day challenges is going to have a much different role and scope of responsibilities than if they work at a hospital and they're dealing with 5 software engineers who are contract. It won't be the same, right? Like they'll have some similarities and carryover, but how they solve problems will be different, and the contextual lens at which they look through things is going to be different. A much better approach, where I say like apples to apples, is an IT lead at a software company with 100 engineers, maybe a CTO, chief technical officer, that has 40 engineers they're working with, because there's more overlap with them. So if I had a certain objective of X, I would say, okay, this hospital IT lead doesn't make sense for me, or vice versa. Maybe I only want to sell to hospitals. Then I would have more congruency in my sample size, is what they call it. So you got to figure like who you're going to talk to, who's the best fit to answer the questions, and not everyone will be. It's your job to figure that out. Here's two of the projects I've ran. So a target customer profile that we looked at for that, the device lifecycle software, head of IT, director of IT, senior IT manager, and they're in these industries. We wanted to stay away from education, government, and other types of nonprofits for various reasons. This is probably even too much. We probably would have wanted to start with 1 or 2 verticals, right? And then we would refine from there. This is for a company where I helped them understand if there was a market opportunity for long-haul trucking. They were selling communication software for insurance companies. So we put together firmographics and psychographics to figure out who was the best fit to inform whether that was it. And we decided, okay, it was an owner-operator business, long-haul trucking business. They had 5 to 20 trucks. They were in North America, and they only focused on long-haul. Not last-mile stuff like Amazon delivery, not large conglomerates that are doing multiple supply chains across large retail locations. They were a mid-sized operator. So we're only going to focus on them. So again, you're going to like really start fine-tuning who you're going to talk to and who you think is going to form what you're doing. To find these people, best way is your CRM. Best place to start. And for existing businesses, there's a treasure trove of people, and you'll start to have firmographics and psychographics around who is a fit for that research objective. If you don't have them, or you're trying to find someone that is outside of your CRM, or maybe has different firmographics or psychographics, network referrals, social media is a great one, networking groups, paid panels and expert networks I use now almost exclusively in my work. It's paying for people's time. Now there's a cost to that, but if you've done any type of recruitment for research, you'll know that these areas here, it can take a while to get the people that you need to talk to. That's just my lived experience. Paid panel and expert networks are great because you can use all those firmographics and all those objectives we just set, put them into an email that goes out to their population, and people will come back to you that fit all those parameters. And you can pay for an hour or 45 minutes of their time to talk about whatever you want to talk about. So there's a cost to that, but it's very fast. And reviews of third-party sites. Great place to sort of do some of that desk research we talked about, where you're aggregating how people are thinking about things, and you can throw that into some type of AI, LLM, and just go through all the results and figure out like what the pattern themes are. I even used Reddit. So this was a company that was selling into structural engineers. I posted in the structural engineering subreddit, asked 2 questions. You can see them here. And I said to them, hey, if you want to talk to me, I'll compensate you for your time. And you can see how people were already answering the 2 questions that I dropped into the subreddit. And I was DMing these people and asked them if they wanted to participate in the research. There's another great way that you can sort of get the ball rolling to try and get access to people, and also use these answers to inform your objectives and how you're going to have the conversations with people. And the common question I often get is like, well, how many people should I talk to? There's a lot of research in qualitative research around the best sample sizes. And to give you like the too long don't read version, what you're aiming for when you do qualitative research is something called thematic saturation, sometimes called insight saturation. And that's where the new learnings that you have are starting to tip over on the bell curve. So what that means is you stop learning new things. You can continue to have more conversations at this part of the bell curve, but the amount that you're learning is negligible. Like there's limited returns in the data collection that you're doing. So what's the magic number? The bell curve starts to tip over around 7 conversations. Once you get to 12, you're probably here. Once you get to 15, you're probably here. So that means around 12 conversations, you've probably captured 90% of the learnings that you're going to learn overall. Now, there's some key clutch things you need to understand here, and that is the objectives and who we talk to have to be really, really strong here, because if we get into that scenario where I talked about it's multiple people involved in one sample, they're going to skew the data. And the last thing I'll say is, if you do want to have more than 12 conversations, when would you do that? There's a great link to an article by
Okay, it looks like we're having a little bit of trouble with Ryan's internet again, but I think he'll be back.
Still here.
There we go.
Am I freeze? Okay.
I think Ryan may have disappeared again. I think his internet might have just dropped out. Let's try and get him back in.
Am I here?
Okay, you're back.
George?
Fantastic. Yep, we got you.
Perfect. Sorry about that. Okay. Where did I leave off? Where did I drop off, George?
You can start right back at this slide again, Ryan.
Thank you. Okay. So we talked about who we're gonna, how we're going to set objectives, who we got to talk to. Now you got to actually get them agree to talk to you. A lot of this is like cold calling and cold emailing methodology, which is it can be a challenge. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Recruitment is often the hardest part of getting in front of people. So how do you increase the odds of you actually getting a customer? There's a few ways. One is you got to be specific about what you're talking about. This is not a sales call. This is you trying to understand a lot about them, right? It's research and what you're going to be talking about, because people don't want to be surprised or they might be anxious about these things. So you really want to set the stage of what is you're going to try and talk to them about and what do you want to understand. How are you going to talk to them? What's the length? What's the methodology? Phone, in person, that still happens, or video chat like this. And send some type of personalization if appropriate. You don't have to, not everyone's comfortable. That could be, I saw this in your company, I saw this news happen, I just saw you got promoted, XYZ, right? The key thing is you want to be very transparent about what you're doing, and you really want to focus on them. So why their skill set, why they're the best fit. You want to help them, you want to give them a better experience. You can see that's what we did with Randy here. We're focusing on them, and they're going to be the ones that help us understand, how we get to that outcome. All right. So Randy says yes. What do we do next? Well, we're going to talk to them. There's a lot of methodologies and psychology in this environment. I used it when I was a reporter, an investigative reporter. People use it a lot in any type of investigative work, legal, law enforcement. Therapists have their own methodology. The good part is we're just trying to understand how people make business decisions. So the 101 type of approach can really help us here and move the needle from like 0 to 100 really quickly. And I'm going to show you some ways you can do that, some tips and tricks. The first is you want to create an environment where they feel like it's a safe space and they can share. And a lot of that is really just how you conduct yourself. You want to speak clearly and calmly, not slow. You want to practice active listening. So that's like paraphrasing, really seem like you're engaged. That does two things. It triggers your memory, helps your memory, but also helps them understand that you're actually paying attention to them. Don't take notes. I want you just to, don't write down answers. I just want you to take notes. People get tripped up because they're trying to write everything down. Well, we have technology now that can record conversations and we don't have to worry about all the great things people are saying. You need to be more engaged on what are the answers that they're giving you and how can you dig deeper into what they're telling you. Don't offer any conclusions or try to put words in their head. This is research. You're an objective participant, right? And you're just sort of guiding them through a process. Try not to interrupt them and ask one question at a time, which is actually a very tough thing to do. We have a natural tendency in conversation to ask a few questions at once, triple and double up questions. An example of that would be, when did you prioritize this being a problem, and who did you speak to about it? And what were some of the things you looked at? Those are 3 questions, but that's easy. It's easy for us to sort of bundle them together. The challenge is you're going to confuse the person on the other end, either from a subtextual standpoint or conscious standpoint. So you want to separate all those questions because those are actually 3 questions and allow space to breathe in between them. One of the things you want to do when you're talking to people is you want to dig into vague or absolute statements. The reason for that is a lot of the responses that they give you in the beginning are just going to not have a lot of detail in the first 0 to 10 minutes. And that's just because their memory hasn't really activated yet. It's really hard for us to recall things instantly. We need time for our brain to make these soft connections about what we did, the actions we took. So you can use probing questions to follow up on these things when people make vague or absolute statements.
I like the packaged aspect of it, of how it was a really straightforward value prop. It's your productized service where we're going to write X amount of articles for you. It's going to cost this amount. It's something that I could budget for. It took away a lot of the unknowns. And I felt like it was I'm on the every other week plan. The weekly plan for me, frankly, it's just too much content. It's too much responsibility, and it's just too much of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
That every other week seemed like and I think at the time they had a monthly plan. They might have dropped that. But every 2 weeks seemed like a really good cadence of, okay, that's going to be enough content that's going to get out there, but not overwhelm me in trying to manage that. And so I don't know. I think ultimately it just came back to it seemed like the pricing was right, the quality was right. It was just all those things kind of combined that it was easy enough to give it a try for a quarter. And a year later, still there.
You said it addressed the unknowns. Walk me through what you mean by that.
Yeah, so just
address the unknowns. Vague statement. What does that mean? Our job is to unpack those things because people are going to say those types of things when you talk to them. This is a drum I beat constantly. Actions over opinions. What did they do? What did they do next? Facts, and there's a few reasons why we want to do this. Facts, stories, narratives, and timelines are easier for people to talk about. We're much better at telling stories than we are about recalling data. And when you go to then compare these facts, stories, narratives, and timelines, you'll actually have a better, you'll have a much easier time comparing these things because you'll see the trends And the themes emerge much easier than you will if you just ask them hypotheticals or opinion-based questions or subjective questions. So you really want to focus on these types of things. And one of the tricks I always have, or one of the tips I have for people is, what did you do next is often one of the best questions you can ask. Because if we're looking for timelines and stories and a buying process that we need to influence, you can just start with where the process began and ask them as they get to one step, great, what did you do next? What did you do next? Because as you do that, you're going to build out that timeline and that narrative, like all the actions they took to go from we needed to prioritize solving the thing to we chose you as the vendor.
Yeah, I mean, between 2017, so we started in 2017, and we were just like super busy with sort of like the initial load of work that we had gotten just through our own contacts. And then, yeah, like basically we were just like go all the time. So we had a really crappy like one-page website for the longest time. It was probably just like a one-pager. And yeah, and so really, it was really on like early 2020, like COVID hits. And then a couple of our clients had sort of like slowed down their spending in those early weeks. And so I figured, okay, like now's a really great time. I can take a breath and focus on marketing for a bit. Mm-hmm. And so that's, yeah, it seemed like a good time to do it.
So what did you do? So you have the thought, okay, so clients are slowing down spending. I need to get more in my pipeline, or at least get some more thought process. I think content marketing can help. What did you do next?
Right. So, see, I think the first thing I did was I actually went to a different firm to do,
So a few things there. I paraphrased. So I was doing that as a recap. I stuck to a timeline. I actually pushed them back a bit because I wanted to understand what we have a habit. People have a habit of jumping ahead in the timeline, right? We cover a lot of ground quickly. So I'm always pushing people back. And I'm starting to get like that narrative. What did you do here? What did you do here? What did you do here? Because if I can get that in the aggregate, then I know how to build a marketing program to influence it.
Yeah, I mean,
So last thing I want to show you everything was unpacking decisions and processes, which I just sort of touched on. People will truncate years and months of their mindset and the things they did within seconds or sentences of speech. We have to really unpack how these things unfolded, because they're just going to gloss over it naturally. It's a storytelling technique, right? We do that. Our job is to dig in and really pull back the layers of things. So dig into their motivations, behaviors, why they chose to they chose a certain action or chose a certain path. Here's the thing though, why can start to feel like an interrogation. And this is not what you're trying to achieve here. Remember, the vibe we want is friendly space, even though it's research, but it's safe space. They can share, feels good. So you want to ask why without asking why, which is why I have a list of probing questions in that document that we're going to be sharing. It's a way of rephrasing things such as, that's interesting, I haven't heard that yet. Can you expand on that? We're asking why, and we're unpacking things that are actually making it feel like it's an interrogation.
Were there any anxieties or concerns you had as you're talking to them about sort of how they talk about what they did?
Price.
Okay, walk me through what's the issue with price?
And when I looked into everything, it appeared to me that this was going to take some of the workload off. Mm-hmm. And that was our main reason to go full on 100% with.
When you say take some of the workload off, can you just walk me through a bit of that? Like what is the workload?
Okay, I'll take you from beginning to end of what happens is when
yes, please. That'd be great.
What was the workload? And that's so many times where we stop in marketing. Oh, we helped with the workload. Well, what is it? How did we help? Why did we help? And the reason why that's important is because as buyers start to look at solutions like yours, they're going to look at things that are relevant and credible within the context of that workload. So you need to understand how these things unfold. And the best way to do that is help unpack it and have them walk through it. All right. So let's say you have your 12 conversations. Now you got to organize the data. One of the most common ways that we do this in qualitative research is an approach called thematic analysis. There's a few ways to do it. This is really one of the most straightforward ways, and it's basically what it sounds like. You're re-listening or reading the interviews you just had. I do both. I re-listen and I read the transcripts back. And you're starting to now get the patterns in your brain and the ways that you want to sort of bucket the data. We call it codifying in qualitative research. But it's really just like, this answer belongs here, this answer belongs here. And if we go back to our research objectives, if we've done a good job of bucketing the things we want to learn and why, this becomes really straightforward to do, because you start to look at the answers and you say, oh, that belongs here, that belongs here. There's lots of qualitative research tools that you can use out there. I've used Dovetail. This is one called Condons. But you can just use a note taker and Google or Word to start highlighting things. You can make it and just drop things in a spreadsheet. You don't need the tools. What matters is the process. And if you do this, I guarantee you're going to have such a really in-depth, rich knowledge of how people make decisions. And you're really going to start looking at your marketing and sales in a whole new way. And the way you can socialize these things is you can, whether it's you're building a persona or some type of buyer story, whatever the framework is that you want to use, you can start sharing these things in these documents, and documents to socialize to your colleagues and to your teams, right? And this is one where it's we call it business trigger and jobs be done. Some people call it the category entry point, but it's really like, what was the tipping point for someone to make a buying decision? You can see how we've summarized different parts of the conversation. And this could have been at different points in that dialogue, right? So this could have been minute 5, minute 10, and minute 27, but we've put them all together like a puzzle. And they're all voice of the customer driven quotes. They're helping us understand why we've come to a conclusion or a code or a theme, right? And we've done that over and over again to share that with our teammates about, like, why do we believe this to be true? This is how we do that. We transcribe, we listen, we parse, we put it all back together. And these are the ways that I like to organize my research reports. And it's very much like a persona-driven methodology. So roles, responsibilities, and business model, the process that they're looking to improve, because remember, all solutions in B2B live within a process. So what's that process? How problems manifest in this process, the buying triggers and catalysts for change, sources of information they trust, not where they go, what do they trust? There's a big difference. How they evaluate a shortlist, how they evaluate the considered approaches, the solutions they compare you against, buying committee members, and why they win deals. There's another very straightforward example of how I would do this for a client and how I've done it in-house and how I think you can do it yourself. If we go back to the example of that pharmaceutical consultant, this was how companies that we interviewed, pharmaceutical companies, launched digital healthcare products. What's interesting was the consultant thought they were going to build their business around here, which is helping the companies understand what their opportunities in the market were to either acquire or build new digital healthcare products. What was interesting, though, was this is where people fell down, because these are all scientists and pharmaceutical companies who would never ask the board of directors for $5 million to build an app, a software product. They were terrified. So messaging, positioning, what we led with in our marketing was here. Now, as a service-based business model, this consultant still helped with all these things. But this is what they led with, and this is what their marketing really focused on to drive qualified leads into the door. This is the trucking one that we worked on, where now we know the process of dispatching loads and how they communicate within that process, because that was the piece of software they've built. So now you can see what content pillars you can start to build, because this is the process that all these ideal buyers actually care about. And whether they use the tool or not, they're still going to want to improve this process. But this is the process that we have to help them improve and influence for them to put us on the buyer's consideration set. So we're actually first around, and if they want to evaluate us, they will, as an option to improve this process. And not only that, I know the tech stack they use and how it integrates together and who the competition is, because I asked them. Very straightforward, right? So now I know how to position against these things and where we're going to fit in the mix. And finally, one of the companies I've done a lot of work with over the years, great company in Canada called Rewind, they had an acquisition of a GitHub product. Their value proposition is they do backup and recovery for cloud applications, software products. So Atlassian, Shopify, GitHub, you name it, they've built a backup for it. What was interesting is when they acquired the GitHub product and they folded into the product portfolio, we used all the business intelligence from the founding team about how to go to market, and nothing was really happening. So I got tasked to understand, look, well, what was happening here? Why are we not getting the leads we anticipated? Well, it turns out we contextually had the problem wrong, or we're talking about it the wrong way. And we had the buyer wrong, which is a whole other different story. But for this purpose of the conversation, we are positioned as a backup solution that they can plug into to save their code repositories or back up their code repositories. That's not where the pain lied. The pain lied with the IT department, who was trying to build backup scripts or a version of Rewind in-house, and they didn't want to do it anymore. So we changed a lot of the messaging in the marketplace, and we tested this in ads, and we built new pieces of content to support a larger process. That doubled the installs in just a few weeks, because we started talking about it in a way that made sense to these people before we weren't. This is why I like to do this whole process, because it gets us to this end state where we're influencing how people buy, how they look at things contextually, and then we can build marketing programs that are relevant and credible. These are some resources that I think everyone's going to get, George. This is my list of questions. Great stuff. A lot of this is customer discovery, customer development, but marketing and customer development are like Venn diagrams, in my opinion. So if you figure a lot of this stuff out, you're going to do really good at sort of understanding how you can sell into a market. How'd I do for time?
Perfect. You've nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. I'm just
even with technical difficulties.
Even with technical difficulties, we have a couple of questions from the audience, Ryan.
Okay.
The first is from Robert, and he's asking if you use a particular platform for doing those paid panels. Like, do you use Winter? Is there a group that you use?
So the short answer is yes. Two I'm using right now. One's called Emporia, which is very interesting. They crawl LinkedIn, and I've been successful with them. I've used user interviews in the past. They're great. Respondent's great. There's a great one called NX1, which aggregates various expert networks. Here's the thing. Whether you call them panel recruitment, expert networks, whatever, there's hundreds of them, all with different flavors of different expertise, right? Some are just IT focused, cybersecurity, right? Winter, which is great. It really skews towards marketing and sales. Great. A lot of it's just finding the right fit for who you want to talk to, because one of the challenges you'll find is the population base is limited. So if I want directors of IT cybersecurity at Fortune 1000, this expert network here might not work, but this one does, right? And it's all different costs associated with that too, because there's DIY and there's white glove service where people go and find them and just hand them to you on a silver platter. So I can follow up with people there, but user interviews, Respondent, Emporia, and iNext1 are great ones to start getting your feet wet in this world. Or talk to your product people if you're with them. They do this stuff all the time. A lot of marketers are shocked to see how many times product people are just talking to in-market users. Some of them have 15 conversations a week with strangers in market. But marketers, not so much.
Amazing. Another question from Alex. What do you do if no one is interested in speaking with you? You touched on that a little bit already, but if you could kind of revisit some of the key points there.
It's tough. Recruitment's tough. right? And especially if you don't have a large customer base to pull from. One is look at your messaging, see if it has any whiff of sales. Not going to happen. Lean on your networks and people you know to make introductions. Best thing you can do, because the average think how much your inbox gets blown up, George, or your DMs in LinkedIn, right? You have like what, 20,000 connections now on LinkedIn. I'm sure your DMs are bananas. So people are inundated with stuff and they're filtering it out like we do with everything else in our brain, right? So think about how you're reaching out. How can you get a leg up either through a personal connection or you're part of a community, like George's community. Like George might even know someone he could introduce you to, right? Last resort, pay for their time. And it's not much. Like if I just did a project now where we're speaking to director level people in large companies, and we paid about $300 for an hour of their time, USD. So not a crazy expense, still part of a budget. But if you can get an hour with a director who's buying software that you want to sell to them, $300 ain't too bad.
Right. What if marketing is able to get buy-in for this and they make this customer interview kind of like embedded in their process? So maybe they get looped in by customer success once a customer kind of has like their first big win, and then they pull them into a conversation. Is that something like that kind of system or timing? Does that help get in front of these people and have those conversations?
Yeah. But customer success is probably facing the same battles as you. Right? Everybody in an organization wants access to customers in some way. So that becomes sometimes a friction in itself, the politics of that. Sales doesn't want you to talk to their accounts. Customer success wants them for case studies. Product wants a piece of them. So that's hard, because then it's just like, so there's a few ways around that. One is, have good relationships, get in a room, talk about what everyone needs, and identify who's willing to do that. People have been building customer panel groups internally for decades. I've worked inside, I've been in-house where that's happened. We've had customer buying groups, customer panels. There are customers that represent the voice of the market. They're a fantastic tool or a way to get insights. So help work with your colleagues, isolate and identify these people and do handoffs where needs be. Or like I keep saying, try and build some things outside of the scope, because remember, you have to still influence the market. Your customers only have one contextual lens of like how they work with you. And they might not even be in tune with how things are shifting and new things in the market that they might be evaluating you against. Out of market and in-market buyers are doing that. So if you have to influence how they think, you probably are going to want to go and try and talk to them. I don't know if I answered your question, but that's...
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Ryan. We do have to move on to the next session now. If people do have questions, I'm sure they can connect with you on LinkedIn, and I'm sure you'd be so kind as to maybe answer them there.
Yeah, man, I answer all the DMs. So I try to anyway. It gets harder with every month, but please just reach out. And always happy to help if I can.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Well, everyone, that's a wrap on our first track, understanding your audience. Thank you so much again, Ryan, for all your insights. Coming up next, we're moving to the second track of the conference, creating content that drives action. We're going to start that conversation off with Jess Cook, who will be talking to you about something that's a bit of a tongue twister. So stay tuned to find out. You don't need to go anywhere. Keep this browser on. I'm going to end this next session, and then the next one's going to start very shortly. Thanks so much, Ryan.
You're welcome.